Hello friends, this lesson is our value and form review. Our objectives are demonstrate knowledge of different drawing pencil types and how to use them to create different values, and then develop skill in creating different values, edges, and establishing believable form using graphite pencil. And if I take a sip of my coffee every now and then, I'm sorry I have a cold and I don't want to cough through your lesson. So we have two words worth knowing. You might have heard of them before. Our first is form. Form in 2D artwork, form is a shape transformed to give the illusion of depth or 3 dimensions, so especially important in drawing and painting. Our second is value. Value is the degree of light and darkness of an area. It creates believable form, depth, and space in your artwork. An excellent example is right down there of student artwork of a drawing of shoes. So excellent use of value that creates a nice rounded form and believable space. So let's review graphite pencils a little bit. So on all of our pencils, there's a little designation at the end. So a regular number 2 pencil is HB, it's kind of the middle. And then on our scale right here, so HB is the center, as we go towards the right side, 2H, 3H, 4H, the graphite in there is going to get harder and lighter. It also is kind of harder to blend. As you go to the left on the B scale, the larger the number, the darker and softer that graphite is, and then that's what allows you to make really dark values. So as you're drawing, you want to pick a few pencils. You don't need one of each, but maybe 1 or 2 B pencils and then maybe 1 or 2 H pencils. So you have a wide variety to choose from as you're shading. So form. Remember, form is a shape transformed to give the illusion of depth, and it's shaped by value. So our 3 basic shapes are a circle, a square, and a triangle. And then our 5 basic forms are the sphere, the cube, the pyramid, the cone, and the cylinder. And these things make up everything. So if you can recognize and shade these things correctly, you're going to have a really easy time creating believable form in your 2D drawings. Our second most important thing is value. You want at least 5 different values in your drawing to create believable form. And a lot of people hang out in those middle values when you draw. So you really want to stretch yourself and get that wide range. So remember, it's the degree of light and darkness of an area. It creates a believable form, depth, and space in your artwork. So for instance, on that little shaded sphere down there, we have the light source up at the top, which creates a highlight, which creates midtones. Shadow, the further away it gets from the light source, the darker it gets. There's a little reflection from the ground, and then the cast shadow is the darkest. And also think about how that value hugs, it's a circle, right? It's a sphere. It hugs that form, and that's what creates form. So our 5 elements of shading, you need to know this. So if you're shading a sphere, you're going to have a highlight. That is going to be your lightest value. You're going to have a shade or midtone. Kind of depends on how you want to call it. You're going to have reflected light underneath. So your reflected light is going to be a little bit lighter than your shade. And that's the light that's bouncing off the ground. Your shadow is going to be towards the darker end of the value scale. Your cast shadow should be the darkest. No light is hitting that portion of the drawing underneath that sphere, so that should be the darkest. And then also the cast shadow sometimes will fade out too. So make sure you understand these 5 elements. If you do, you're going to have way more successful drawings. So values and edges and transitions. So whenever 2 values or colors meet, they make an edge. So they make a sharp edge when light transitions from dark to light very quickly. So for instance, at number 1, so it's dark light, just there's a line there because it's a very definite edge. Then you're going to have a soft edge. That's when it's a little bit smoother. Think about a gradation. So that's when on a sphere it transitions slowly. On a cube, from one edge to the other on a cube, it's going to be sharper. So you need to think about the difference. Is what you're looking at a sharp edge, or is it something that's smoother? And then number 9, it pulls it out even further. So then how smooth is that edge? So here's another example. So artists use hard and soft edges to create different effects in their drawings. So right there is a really definite hard edge. It's from the statue to the background. Right there is a softer edge on the nose. So it's a little bit of a smaller transition, but it's still soft. It's not a hard edge. It's a softer edge. There is still a little bit of an edge there. A lost edge is you can barely even see the transition. It's so soft. And then a blended edge, same kind of thing, but a little bit more than the soft edge. So there's all these different types of edges and transitions that you need to be paying attention to as you draw. So as you're drawing, you need to ask yourself, what kind of shape is it? Is what I'm looking at an organic or a geometric shape? What is the value? So have a value scale out. Where does it fall? Is it falling on the darker side? Is it falling on the lighter side? Don't get stuck in the middle. What kind of edge does that value shape have? If it's an organic shape, does it have a sharper edge? Does it have a more transition, softer edge? So is it a soft edge? Is it a crisp edge? There are no outlines in nature. You should not outline the whole thing with a black line and then fill it in like a coloring book. There's nothing wrong with that type of drawing, but for this assignment, I want you to start learning that that is not normal, that's not natural. So we're trying to create a natural looking drawing. So here's another example. So I have my color image on the left and then my black and white image on the right. So it's easier when you're getting started to take your reference image and make it in black and white if we're doing black and white drawing, because that will kind of help you figure out the values easier. So if I'm drawing these donuts, I'm going to look at my value scale. Those sprinkles right there, those are at a number 1. They're super, super light. That it's a strawberry, it's pink, but right there is about a 3, maybe even it fades up to a 2 in some areas. There's my level 5 down there. There's my level 7. That's the darkest part right there. Barely any light is hitting it, and it's also a dark value. So as you're drawing, use a reference and then make sure you're shading appropriately. Here's another example. So let's look at edges. So if I'm looking at that sprinkle from that bright white to the middle value is a really hard edge. Very quick transition. If I'm looking at where the icing kind of goes over the donut, that's a very, very soft transition, a very, very soft edge. And then you could also think about the shape, whereas that sprinkle is a more geometric shape. It's almost like a cylinder. Whereas that transition right there is a very soft, organic type of shape. So you're thinking about shapes, edges, value. So just some tips. Do not smudge with your fingers. I will let you use a blender, but if you're using a blender, always go back over it with pencil. Do not just shade with a blender. If it's too much, I will take it away from you. Apply your pencil in overlapping strokes. Use small circles or lines, just depending on your style. But you want to start light, vary your pressure, and then increase as you need to. Don't start pushing all the way in there. You're going to make a dent in the paper and then it'll never come up. So start light and then add pressure as you go. Think of it, it's like you're kind of like giving the paper a massage. Use the side of the pencil. If you're using the point, that's good for like doing details, like details of an iris. For very tiny, small details. But for shading, you want to use the side and just build up. Keep your pencil sharp and do not forget, there are no outlines in nature. There are none. It's only edges created by the changes in color and value. That's it. So, this is your practice skill check. I want you to do a basic shaded sphere and label the 5 values. That's for level 1. For expert level, so those of you who are in Drawing Painting 3 I want you to do a creative sphere. So you are going to take that sphere and choose a spherical form and shade it accordingly. So you could see my example down there. I picked a little Mario Bomb and I created a shaded sphere shape. Check off Myth Me when you are finished, and you need to make sure that you fill the whole square. Don't leave the background white. I want to see every single part of that shaded. I do have examples in class for you to look at, and I cannot wait to see what you do. I bet your guys are going to do awesome. Good job.